A few months ago, you talked about the fact that what is happening in Gaza is the biggest atrocity in the 21st century. We now know that a UN commission has deemed the situation in Gaza or described it as genocide being committed in Gaza. Would you agree with the commission?
That will be a matter for the competent authorities, for the ICJ, the ICC. I think lawyers will be arguing over this for a long time and historians will be arguing over it. The important thing to me is to get that aid moving. Whatever we call it, I just need to see the trucks moving in and we need to see an end of this starvation. During the ceasefire, we were getting in 500, 600 trucks a day. When I was there, we can do that again. We can reach 2 million people in Gaza very, very fast. And what I've heard this week from President Trump calling for a ceasefire, from all the world leaders, get the aid in and save lives at scale.
You talk about the aid that was getting in during the ceasefire. You talk about the potential of what can happen, but it's not happening. That's the point here, that it's not going in. People are starving. Famine has been declared in parts of Gaza. So what needs to now happen?
Absolutely. We're getting in a fraction of what we need. As I said, 500, 600 trucks a day should be the floor, not the ceiling. And we're getting in a tiny amount, a drop in the ocean of what's actually needed. So we need all the crossings open. We need clear, safe routes. We need to be allowed to use the networks we've got, community networks for distribution. And we need an end to the bureaucratic obstacles, including on NGOs, because we need the NGOs in there, we need the commercial flow. Look, this isn't rocket science. This can be done. We know how to do it at scale and in a neutral, independent, impartial way. So that's our ask of the Israeli authorities. We're having very practical conversations with the Americans and others about how we could get from here to there for the sake of those Palestinian civilians who are dying right now.
The Israelis, when I've spoken to them, they have publicly said that they have pointed the finger of blame on the UN. They say the trucks are there, they can get in, they're not doing their work, or they're allowing them to be looted, that 87% of the UN trucks are being looted by hungry people, by gangs, by Hamas. How would you respond to that?
We try to rise above some of this stuff because it is a bit of a distraction. Basically, can you imagine that we would deliberately leave our supplies just sat there? We're humanitarians. It's our job to get those supplies moving. We face these restraints. We unload, we have to load back up again, we have to wait for security clearances. We have our people kicked out or denied security clearances to stay there, do their job. Our brilliant coordinator on the ground told that he can no longer coordinate our work. So we're having to work around all these obstacles all the time. And look, we are getting a lot of our supplies looted. That's true. They're being looted by hungry, angry civilians who know exactly which road our convoys are coming down because it's very clear in advance where we're operating. And until we flood Gaza with aid, that looting will remain high. The black market will continue to be stimulated because we're not able to get in the supplies at scale which are needed.
The Israelis have also said that, frankly, the operation of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is being sabotaged by the likes of the UN because they don't want it to work, because they only want their system, the UN system, to be able to flood Gaza with aid, and therefore you're not providing the kind of support that you should be to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
So only the UN and our humanitarian partners across the humanitarian community, including the NGOs, can do this at the scale required. And it's a massive, massive scale to turn around this level of starvation. But we're not in the business of going around sabotaging other efforts. We want to see the food get through and as much food as possible.
Do you believe that a ceasefire can be reached, that there are currently talks behind the scenes of potentially moving things along? We know that Benjamin Netanyahu on his way to New York and then to DC. Do you think anything's likely to change?
We have to keep hoping. Even hope over expectation. Every day we get up, and that's what we work for. It's what the Secretary General has called for repeatedly in his statements, including in his big statement to the GA. It's what President Trump and so many other world leaders called for. Ultimately, we can do as much as we can on the humanitarian side, but it's the ceasefire that really makes all that difference. And this week, there's been a lot of theatre, but when the dust settles, I think people will look at this week as having been a very practical, engaged week for genuine diplomacy, genuine peacemaking, pragmatic, difficult at times. We argue, it's noisy, it's eclectic. That's how diplomacy works. But I think we are seeing steps forward towards a potential ceasefire and on the other big, difficult, complex dossiers that we work on.
Mr. Fletcher, help our audiences. I mean, we often report and try and paint a picture of the situation in Gaza, but help our audiences understand what your teams are seeing on the ground.
I mean, I don't know really how our teams are coping. You know, when I check in with them, many of our Palestinian staff are themselves, of course, starving. They've been displaced time and time and time again. They've lost family members. They've lost hundreds of colleagues, of course, because we ourselves have been under attack and our buildings have come under attack. So this work is really hard, but we are so committed to staying and delivering as much as we can in the conditions that we face. But our people every day, they're going into the hospitals and seeing kids having limbs amputated without anaesthetic. They know that the food is there at the border and that we could save lives at scale. So they're dealing with frustration, they're dealing with anger, they're dealing with despair, but they're humanitarians, and so they just keep on going.
Do you think an aspect of it is UN incompetence on those borders? Donald Trump has described the UN as ineffective, not being a partner in resolving global conflicts for him.
Look, there was a brilliant meeting between President Trump and Secretary General Guterres after the speech, where they were really focused on this common agenda around peacemaking, ending conflicts, on which the President was absolutely clear in his statement, and of course the SG is utterly committed to it. But no, I don't accept that we are incompetent, because I work every day with our teams in these crises globally. They are incredibly committed, passionate, experienced humanitarians. They know how to do this, and so no, I will not take that criticism of our operations. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. I challenge anyone to come into the situations that we deal with and deliver. So of course we have our flaws, of course we're imperfect, but we're not giving up, and I will always defend the work of our people.
So it's essentially the Israelis not letting your trucks in?
We are facing massive bureaucratic obstacles. This is a man-made famine. It could be stopped if we were allowed to deliver at the scale that we did before, that we could do tomorrow, and that the world is calling for.
Let's talk about Sudan, because of course this is another major humanitarian crisis. We have had a team in North Darfur. Just talk us through the challenges you're facing there.
Sudan's the big one. Massive, massive challenges. You've got 30 million people in need of aid. I've come from a lot of meetings yesterday on Sudan, particularly looking at the situation in Al-Fasher, under siege at the moment, tens of thousands of people trapped there, desperate. So we need to get the humanitarian corridors open. We need ceasefire, basically, here as elsewhere. We need that humanitarian access. We've got to get civilians to safety. Sudan is a very, very complex, difficult place for us to work. We are massively underfunded. We're only about 20% funded across the Sudan effort, but we also face these political obstacles and a massively insecure situation in which, again, we lose many colleagues because of the dangers that we run.
They've told our teams, those who have been fleeing the fighting, that frankly the international community has completely abandoned them. There are no food trucks coming, there is no aid, there is no support, there is no attention.
We absolutely have not abandoned the civilians of Sudan, and we have those convoys ready to go. We've got to get them through the checkpoints. Often when we hit the checkpoints, then we are hit ourselves. And so we have to try and find the security that we need. We're demanding it from the world so we can deliver. There are 30 trucks right now in Yalda that we want to get into Al-Fasher to meet the needs of that civilian population. So we're there. You know, Sudan was my first trip in the job. In my first week in the job, I went and spent a week in Sudan to try to bring that visibility and attention that the Sudanese people need. And I feel that this week we've been getting that. We've been getting that high-level attention. Yesterday, a very, very good meeting with regional players, with the Europeans, with the Americans. We've got to try everything to get those supplies moving, but also to get this ceasefire.
We know that there is a lot of foreign interference in Sudan as well, from the likes of the Russians, the UAE, the Turks, the Saudis. There have been accusations of everyone meddling in the affairs of the fighting factions in Sudan. What would you say to them to stop doing what they're doing in terms of supporting the various sides so that the much-needed humanitarian aid can get in?
Well, I think there have been openings this week in the conversations that we've had, in the very, very practical engagement with all of the regional players, but also, as I say, with the Europeans, with the Americans, with the African Union, and that sense that we do need this common program now. Let's kind of put aside the politics, put aside all the other dimensions and just focus on getting as much humanitarian support through as possible, and let's focus on a peaceful resolution to this conflict, which has gone on far too long and taken far too many lives.
Mr. Fletcher, finally, what are you hoping out of these two particular conflicts happens over the course of the next few weeks and months following the UN General Assembly meetings?
I think that's exactly the right question, Yalda. We've got to move from statements of concern. The people of Sudan and Gaza can't eat statements of concern. They can't eat UN resolutions. They can't eat fiery speeches from the podium. We've got to think about the practicalities. I want that access to Al-Fasher and the Kordofans in Sudan. I want to get our teams into Darfur full time and into Khartoum, where they can be on the ground delivering without impediment in Sudan. And I want to get scaled up funding for those operations, because even when we get in, the money is running out and the supplies are running out. Likewise on Gaza, I want to see those hundreds of trucks every day going in. I want to see an end to that starvation. I want to see the world coming together and saying, if we can do one thing, let's now meet the needs of the Palestinian population. Let's get the hostages home, and let's find some way to get this back onto a better political trajectory. I think, honestly, all of the knockabout to one side, all of the drama of this week, I think those will be the real stories of this week, that we've come together in those practical ways to try and meet these massive needs of these populations in Gaza, Sudan, Ukraine, DRC, Afghanistan, and all of the other crises that we work on.
Mr. Fletcher, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.